Up next, controversy surrounds Emiliano Sala's transfer fee. Willis Plaza is now the top scorer in the I-League. Leo Messi is set to return for Argentina in March. The Concacaf Nations League and more in one moment. Hey everyone, welcome to episode 2 of EXTV Live. As you can see, I'm not alone today. I'm here with Emiliano. This guy is well known in the football circles. He is the former media officer for Central FC and also a freelance journalist. Welcome to episode 2, Emil.
Thank you, Andre, and EXTV.
All right.
I'm glad to be here.
Excellent. You know, this is a guy, we've worked together before. We've been in the trenches in football. So definitely the right guy to speak about today's topic. But before we go to local topics, we're going to speak about international topics. Argentine Emiliano Sala has been found. But that's not the interesting news. Apparently, his club, who owned him, is actually asking Cardiff City for the initial payment. I can't remember the exact figure, but what are your thoughts on, obviously he's passed.
Right.
And I'm sure there are clauses in the contract, but what do you think about, after knowing the fact that he's gone, that Cardiff City and these people have a financial disagreement?
This is really a tough situation. It's really unprecedented that you don't really have any clauses per se or mitigations whereby you would say in the event of a disaster, X amount of funds will be paid. So all of the members of the club, his past club, Nantes, etc., it's a matter of grief and a matter of business at the same time. And we know that when we mix that grief and those emotions with the business, right after is probably not the best situation. But there needs to be some sort of compromise for the betterment of football, for the betterment of his family and all those people. Because the more this drags along, his family won't be able to move on properly.
Yep, and that's what we discussed last week as well. We can't even imagine, the sort of lack of closure before they found the body, and now this thing is coming up with the financial situation. What do you do in a situation like that? I'm pretty sure there are clauses. There's probably acts of God clauses, if you want to call it that. But it's still a messy situation, and it's very difficult, I think, to find a common.
A common ground, because How much would you really say? Would it be 10% of the transfer fee if something happens to him while he's in transit or anything like that? Or would it be you have to sit down and negotiate on a level-headed basis and say, let's respect his legacy. We will pay that amount, or possibly we would have those funds donated to a charity in his name. Because in terms of that, I feel that has a better transcendence, and it would go forward better in terms of Cardiff City. I believe that the fans and probably even the administration might feel a bit better about having to pony up those funds, and it might be better for the world of football.
Yep, I agree. I think that's probably the only reasonable solution. It's a messy situation, but I think that's the one way you could come out from this. That reminds me of the situation with what's the name of the team in South America where the players crashed?
Chapecoense.
Right. I wanted him to pronounce it, so I shifted responsibility on purpose because I would have butchered that name. Put together, they put their heads together, and they came up with a solution where I think guys like Ronaldinho and Riquelme and a lot of personalities in South America.
Exactly.
Instead of, that ugly situation that seems to be appearing now. So, that being said, we'll see how it turns out.
Yeah, it's just a wait and see.
Yeah. So up next, Trinidad and Tobago content. It has been reported that the TT Proleague and the SuperLeague are intent on possibly having a merger. What do you think about that?
I think honestly that football in Trinidad and Tobago is at a crossroads. There is, based on the proposal that UEFA had put forward for the merger of the two leagues, this is the only viable option. And this proposal is only going to be for a 2-year period. And after that, it would be the responsibility of all the stakeholders to really maximize on the benefits of the proposal to then try and chart a course long term. That is where I have the reservations for it. As of right now, over that 2-year period, it's a strong proposal. It's a strong way forward. It's where the funds will be distributed evenly throughout the two divisions. You would start to have relegation and promotion, but then where do you go from there? And we find ourselves with that problem a lot, not just in football, but in this country.
Yeah, and you would have unique insight because you have worked with both parties. I mean, I myself worked at one point in time with Central FC and so on. So, you would definitely have more of a accurate insight than maybe someone who's reading the article. Because a couple of people asked me today, they were like, that sounds like a really good idea on the surface. And when you name drop UEFA and even Concacaf being consultants, a lot of people wrongfully said that UEFA were throwing money at the league, and that's not an accurate statement.
Yeah, it's definitely not. UEFA is not throwing 1 cent at the league. All they came down for was to lend their knowledge and their brain power. And they actually had meetings with numerous stakeholders, even down to the fans, to find out what exactly were the problems, what are the possible solutions from their point of view. And then based on that is where they sculpted this entire proposal and put it forward to the Proleague and the SuperLeague and the powers that be to try and move forward. And it is really the only viable option. It's if right now there is a proposal in paper on the table, but it's still a matter of those figureheads to actually go out there now and make it happen and do it properly and do it effectively.
Yep. And not to get into too much details, it's well documented that a lot of these organizations don't get along well. But so we'll see how that goes. I mean, I'm not going to go into that, but I mean, it's well publicized about the conflicts and the conflict of interests and contradicting agendas and things like that. So I'm very curious as a fan of the game and someone who's been around the environment to see how that works out, because I think it was hurting football when you had these conflicting groups not really working together from their perspective.
Right.
So this, if it works out how it should, I think it's a great thing. But I could see a lot of discussion needs to take place.
A lot of discussion is an understatement. At the end of the day, one of the biggest problems in football administration are people's egos and people's inability to probably evolve. Because a lot of the footballing administrators are, to put it lightly, they're getting up there in age, and we're in a new era of football. We're in a new era of Trinidad and Tobago, and there has to be some sort of evolution. We can't just say, okay, we're going to adopt social media, we're going to create a Facebook page and then say, right, we have evolved. That's not evolution. That's probably the first step, but things have taken off in such a way that you have to continue to go there. There is planning, and a matter of, I know a lot of people in terms of, and you could probably relate as well. If you tell them that you're a digital media content creator, they'll be like, "Where's that? You just post on Facebook? Where is that? You run an Instagram page?"
Yeah.
Whereas the world has evolved in such a way where that is a career path. That is where it is at right now. It is the digital age. So we see everyone, if they want to see the Copa del Rey, for example, earlier today.
Yeah.
That was at their fingertips, easy as you like. That can be done here in Trinidad, probably not at the magnitude with all of the multiple camera angles and etc. But it's all a matter of finding that way and being open to those suggestions and making it happen. And being that openness, that's where I see the Pro League and the Super League's merger, and that, or lack thereof, will cause a problem.
Yep. And, essentially just to build on what you were saying, last week we spoke to a guy on Jonathan who was in the younger demographic. And I think he honestly says something that you and I know this. There's a lot of disinterest in local football, which goes without saying. You go to the stadiums and they're empty. There's a couple exceptions in certain grounds in different places.
Right. You
will get a lot of home attendance, but it's not regulated. Doesn't translate into money. Some places, I think Morva is a good example that I know. You'd get a decent crowd there, but it doesn't translate into actual financial gains for everyone involved, and the overall league suffers. And there's there's a distinct disinterest by these guys. And these people need to learn quickly how to bridge that gap, because they've been trying the same methodologies, this. And they need to evolve, and they need to evolve yesterday. Not like just make a Facebook page or the Instagram thing, have a press conference and say all the right things.
Yeah, no. It needs to have a strategy behind it.
Yeah.
It can't be a scattergun approach to say, okay, we're going to do X, Y, and Z. Do you have personnel capable of doing X, Y, and Z effectively? Because to really and truly move forward with this properly, you need to have human resources who have the knowledge base and who probably craving the opportunity. We have the sports management courses. We have all of the digital media campuses. We have all of those availabilities. And honestly, as a society on a whole, we're not maximizing a lot on that potential. We need to start maximizing on that potential, and then we could probably move forward in the football sphere as well. Because a lot of the communities that have the strongest support bases, we would probably classify them as the more rural ones. You have the Guayas, you have the Point Fortins.
Yep.
So it's a matter of what are they doing right still in this digital age to be able to capture that interest on a holistic basis and trying to replicate that around the country and not just standing up and talking.
Yep. And we two of us definitely could testify for that. We've seen, I mean, I remember I threw a couple ideas at a bunch of people, and the response was, honestly, they simply didn't understand the approach.
Yeah.
And that was 4 years ago. So and apparently not much has changed. So I mean, let us know what you all think in the comment section below about this, because we know there's a lot of people out there that actually are simply not interested in the TG Pro League or the Super League. And that is an area that they have to address. So we'd love to hear your thoughts. Some people put some questions last week asking what it is both I should call them franchises if you want to call them that need to do to get things better, because he was one of those guys like us who still shows some interest.
Right.
But he says none of his friends care. He usually goes to the games by himself. Which is something you and I can relate to as well.
Very, very
we could see each other from a mile away when we go to the stadium. Maybe that's how we met. Who knows? But we'll see how it goes. Definitely something. We'll see how it unfolds. All right. So up next, the Concacaf Nations League. It's a new initiative by FIFA and all the confederations. Not everyone. There's the UEFA Nations League as well. Right. But we're in Concacaf, so we're going to speak about that. It's going to start, I think it's in September this year, if I'm mistaken. Trinidad, obviously, by essentially being in the Hex, is in League One, if you want to call it that. I'll have a whole video explaining how it works. But essentially, we are seeded as one of the top teams in the league, because there's 3 leagues.
Right.
For Trinidad and Tobago, this is very good because the lack of international friendlies, or should I say quality friendlies, is a problem. We've heard people complain about it. But we also, have to, beggars can't be choosers, because it's a business. Friendlies are a lot of negotiating and it's finances involved. What do you think about the Concacaf Nations and its implications for Trinidad and Tobago football?
Well, the Concacaf Nations League is really to help boost especially the grassroots football, or like possibly the smaller teams in the region, the teams with less established football associations and teams. In terms of Trinidad and Tobago, what we need to try to maintain is that status in the League One. I think that will be the trickiest point of it, because it is probably very easy for us to a couple of bad results up top, and then in a couple of years, we're playing in the lower leagues, where we're already speaking about lack of interest in the football generally, and that is going to diminish it, because you're probably going from being able to play competitive friendlies per se against the likes of the Mexicos, the Costa Ricas, the USAs, to playing against the consistency of Barbados and Grenada, etc. And I think that is not going to bode well for our football long term. So we need to make sure that we establish our footing.
Yep, I agree, because we have to put our foothold here, because as we've seen in the last couple of years, we are struggling against what we were wrongfully considered weaker teams. The Barbados and the Guyanese teams and things like that. These guys have stepped up their game, and in a lot of ways, if not to sound cynical, we have stagnated in a lot of ways, and in some cases regressed. We saw an upswing, when Stephen Hart was there. I mean, we all know the off-field issues, but we definitely have to capitalize on this particular league for the same reasons that you mentioned. We could easily regress and then be trapped in those lower levels. While these smaller teams, which is what you said, I believe this is what this whole new revamp is targeting. These smaller nations have the ability to play competitive matches, no longer meaningless friendlies, as they call it. And they are raising their game. So when they get continuous playing time, we definitely have to cement ourselves and stay there, which is a lot more difficult than it sounds, because one area, I mean, that's a whole other topic by itself. We don't have a good record in recent time. I can't. I think forgive me if I'm wrong, but I really can't remember the last time we got an international win. Now, this is not me criticizing, Dennis or anybody else. Friendlies are what they are, but football, you are judged on your results, and I definitely think that I'm a bit concerned heading into this CONCACAF Nations League if we are doing enough in terms of preparation. Because based on friendlies against teams like Barbados and the other Caribbean islands, I am legitimately concerned that we may not be able to sustain and stay in the elite group in this CONCACAF Nations League. That is a huge concern for me. But I don't know. What do you think are Trinidad Tobago's chances in this initial version of it?
I think right now we don't stand a very good chance. We're not in a consistent form, really and truly, based on everything. There's so much going on behind the scenes, so many back and forths between multiple sides, that it is not helping the football as it stands right now, and that is trickling down to the players themselves. And I'm sure it is affecting Dennis as well in terms of his preparation, in terms of the players that he would like to select and progress through towards different campaigns. So really and truly, this Gold Cup campaign that we're going into, we need to have a good showing. There needs to be consistent progress towards that to really establish our foothold, so that we know, okay, this is where we are right now. And we're always speaking about long-term and strategic planning. That is where it is right now. It's science. It's the science behind the football. And where we are right now lacking in that equation. We need to get our ducks in a row and fix the science behind it, so that we could start planning properly for the next World Cup cycle, for the next Gold Cup cycle. And then as we have it now in the Nations League, we put that into the cycle as well. Because when they see the other countries, for example, they might already have their pool of players that, okay, these pool of players, those are the ones that we targeting for their development for the World Cup in 2022.
Yep.
And they might be using a different pool of players for the CONCACAF Nations League. So, and they might be just picking the prize jewels out of that Nations League squad and pushing them up. We might not have the largest pool, but we need to also think that level of strategically.
Yep. And it's very evident. I mean, at the youth levels, we haven't been performing well. There's a lot of disorganization, not just in the men's football, but the women's football. And by speaking about the youth, essentially, we're speaking about development. And, things are not well. I had a few conversations with Dennis when he first came to Trinidad. And obviously, this is a guy who has been exposed to, Martinez and Belgium.
Martinez and Belgium.
And, so he knows the modern methodologies required to have a proper national team. And one of the first things we identified was that there wasn't sufficient data for players, and he wanted to establish a data collection process from all the clubs, and he didn't really get the response he wanted. So there's a lot of obstacles this guy has to face that the general public may not know. And then heading into these tournaments with the additional issues that are well publicized, which we sort of touched on before, I think in a very polite way, I think it's definitely going to hurt him. And I can only imagine the headaches he's probably facing, because there's so much limitations, financial issues, players not being paid, things like that. So I'm a bit concerned. I understand that more games is great for us, but in this particular context, which is the CONCACAF Nations League, there is a relegation system, and you could go down.
And go down really quickly.
Yes.
You see in the likes of Germany, etc.
Yep. That is a perfect example.
You went from winning the World Cup to being knocked out of the World Cup and then knocked out of
The UEFA Nations League.
Nations League.
Yeah, I mean, that's a perfect example. Before the World Cup, Germany was essentially on paper the best team out there.
Exactly.
A lot of pundits. I don't think anybody anywhere on the planet, pundits or YouTube guy or whatever, saw that Germany was going to fall like that. And that's something that we need to be very wary of. Look at the US. They got a huge slap in the face by not going to the World Cup. But they are a nation that will probably bounce back. They were highly critical of themselves.
And I think that they've already started to put the things in place. They've seen, okay, a lot of these elder statesmen, they've carried their tenure. And right now they are fully invested in all of those young players. A lot of them being picked up by the German clubs, by the Bayern Munichs, the Werder Bremens, etc.
Yeah.
And they are planning for that long term, not just the upcoming World Cup, but the one after that as well. We need to adopt a similar mindset.
Yep.
And stop the back and forth and the to and fro in. There needs to be calculated action without ego.
Yep, and I mean it's if you want to look at a perfect example, just look at Argentina. In a lot of ways it mirrors what's going on here. They're a huge superpower, if you want to call them that, and they suffered at the World Cup. Their performances are suffering. Their status as an elite team has been questioned as a result, and that's how quickly you can drop along with Germany. These were the World Cup winners and the World Cup finalists, in 2014. So it's a very real situation, and we'll see how it goes. I'm personally excited about the tournament, but for Trinidad and Tobago, I'm concerned. I hope that all goes well, and we have one of those few moments where we can jump up and down, because there are a few, but we'll see how it goes. So up next, heading back into the world stage. Speaking about Argentina, I'm going to jump to Leo Messi. It has been reported by MundoAlbiceleste.com, which our boy Steven John is from. That's one of the premier Argentine English-speaking blogs online, that Leo Messi is rumored to return in March when Argentina takes on Morocco before the upcoming Copa America. What do you think about that? Messi obviously stepped away after the 2018 World Cup. A lot of people said he retired, but he sort of claimed that it was a break. It was actually ambiguous. But what do you think about the possibility of Messi returning just before the Copa America?
I am not too sure and honestly not convinced. He retired already. He decided to come back. They didn't have the World Cup that they would have wanted. Is this really the point in time in life where you probably thank Messi for his services, where he's been under so much immense pressure from Argentina press, from Argentina fans, etc., and you just try to move on? Would this be the stage? Because, for example, okay, he comes back and they say, okay, maybe this will be the last time that he raises the title with them. And then if he doesn't do it now, then what is going to happen to the individual? What is going to happen to his legacy? What is the future of Argentine football moving ahead of Lionel Messi? Should it be? I honestly think maybe it's time that you give him the chance to sit down. And even if he sits down, you plan and you structure a team that does not need a Lionel Messi.
Yep.
You have them develop over that Copa America, and then per se, in a year or two, because Messi would probably be about 32 at that point in time. Then you say, okay, we could possibly bring in Messi as that quote-unquote X factor, because we already have this team structured, strong, and developing already.
Yep, because the AFA president, after the disaster, which was Russia, they somehow managed to get to the second stage and did okay against France.
Yeah.
This is a completely disorganized team, and still, they were pretty okay, I guess, on individual talent. It was 4-3 in the end, but it was well publicized, the chaos with the Argentine Football Association, and the president, Tapia, I can't remember his first name right now, basically said they're going to revamp and try to rebuild things, because at one point in time, the Argentine youth development system was the envy of the planet. Up until the mid-2000s, they were just churning out youth players like crazy.
Talent.
They were winning under 20 World Cups. They were unstoppable at one point in time. And then now, that's not the case. They seem to have, the talent pool seems to have dried up. The developmental system in Argentina seemed to just go out the window. And their claim is that, or the mission objective, was to revamp and bring back Argentina to that status. And currently, they have Lionel Scaloni as the current coach. And he wasn't a popular choice, but they have a lot of financial problems. They tried to go after coaches that they couldn't afford. At one point, I think they considered Pep. And of course, they were priced out of that, obviously.
Definitely.
Yeah, they was never going to afford him. And by the way, a lot of people don't know, a lot of these national coaches don't get a lot of money that people think that they get. They actually get an okay... They get a lot, but not the gazillions that people think that they get.
Yeah.
But... basically, back to what I was saying, Argentina essentially building this team. They totally revamped the squad, and there's a bunch of young players. And Scaloni claimed that the objective of the current team is to streamline the youth systems. So if Messi returns, he has a team unlike before. So we'll see if they true to their word. We'll see. Yeah.
Yeah, that I think is the only...
It sounds great, but we'll see if they actually do
the way
it.
forward. And they have some synergies between Trinidad and Tobago and the Argentine Federation because of all of the bacchanal and drama behind the scenes.
Yes.
It is affecting Argentine football, and you can see even in the European market, a lot of the European bigger teams, they're not targeting those players anymore.
No.
So that youth development stream has dried up. So they need a complete revamp. It might be similar to what Germany went through, say in the early 2000s,
Yes.
where they realized that their youth system was not working. And everybody got on the same page, from the clubs to the federation, and they revamped it, and they reaped the rewards at the World Cup. I mean, not that one.
Definitely not the last
But the
one.
one before.
Yeah, and you literally took the words right out of my mouth because I was going to get to that point. I actually did an entire project on how Germany revamped their system. Exactly what he said, so I'm not going to repeat it.
That's what needs to happen.
They hit a total low in 2000, and they're probably going to have to do that now as well. But the point is that it needed to be done, and we saw the results. And if Argentina, I guess, sticks with what they said they were going to do, we'll see how it turns out. So with that being said, we're going to head into, once again, back to local football. Willis Plaza, a player very familiar to both of us. He had some wonderful success at Central FC. He spent some time abroad. He came back. He is scoring boatloads of goals in the Indian League. 17 goals. He is officially the top scorer. I was literally doing a video for him, for our segment Soccer Warriors Around the World. You need to check that out. And literally by, when I was about to render, scored a couple more goals.
Another one.
So I had to scrap the video because now he went from, I think it was 14, and now he's on 17 now. So this is a guy that a lot of people touted in Trinidad and Tobago as one of the best strikers at one point in time. It never really translated on the national stage yet.
Yeah.
But what do you think about Willis Plaza and his form in the Indian League right now?
Plaza is lighting up the Indian League.
Yep.
He's having a great
Scores
season.
when he wants.
Yeah, he scores when he wants.
Yeah.
We've seen a lot of our attacking players really shine in the Indian Premier League. And in terms of the national team setup, we are lacking a goal scorer up top. Flat out, even when you look through all of the local leagues, the Proleague, the SuperLeague, down to SSFL, the out-and-out goal scorers are few and far between. So right now we have a man named Willis Plaza out in India.
Yes.
And he's bagging the goals.
And that begs the question, because we definitely have a goal scoring problem, because I've looked at all the friendlies and all the competitive matches, and we have played pretty decent. I actually think we are okay, but we can't take our chances. Even in the qualifiers, there were chances that we didn't take. Of course, we were robbed in a particular game against Mexico, but I won't get into that. But Willis Plaza seems to be that guy. Now, I remember when Stephen Hart was around, Willis Plaza was banging in the goals for Central FC. And, of course, Kenvin Jones was around there at the time. And it didn't seem to translate well. He wasn't used as much as I would like. I guess Stephen had his tactical reasons for that. But it seemed as if he couldn't translate that form into the national team at that point in time. But I'm thinking right now, based on our deficiencies up front, is it time to recall Willis back into the team as our savior?
I think he's shown consistency, because I think this is probably his second season or so out in India. He's put up numbers last year. This year he's really exploded in terms of the numbers. We see Marcus Joseph also out there, him being on the score sheet as well. And strikers need goals. They need that confidence. And if you have an individual who has that confidence, and we have a dearth up top, give him a shot.
Yep. Because, we've seen him, and and in Trinidad and Tobago football, you cannot deny this is a guy who clearly is a natural goal scorer. His ability off the ball. Listen, this guy, if we manage to get him to click for the national team, I think he may be the solution that we need. So, definitely EXTV's call-up recommendation, Willis Plaza. And of course, as we said, Marcus Lobo Joseph as well is doing it there. I think he's on his second or third goal, I'm not too sure, because these guys are apparently scoring so much goals. While we're recording, I'm going to have to check and see if it's okay. Then I think Wolf also scored over the weekend.
Wolf has been on his score sheet as well, and we know that he's more, as he's gotten a bit up in age, used as a utility player, but you could still see class is class.
Yep, and these are guys who have been around this setup, and I think Plaza is probably at the right age, so I would love to see him bang those goals in for the national team. So, with that being said, we're going to head into the Q&A segment of EXTV Live. Thanks for watching. If you want to check out more, look at this video, and don't forget to click the subscribe button, because when you do, one of your enemies will be destroyed.